Hi, welcome back. Episode number 5 of this playlist where we are talking about using mocks and spies. So I hope you've already watched episode number 4 because in episode number 4 we created this utility function, get employee display name. And then we started using it in employee list component. And then we know that we have a test file for this component called employee list.test. And then we had to, change the test code for this. After we made this change to the component, we needed to kind of refactor the test code as well because the test code was failing, right? Because the test code was using the get display name, get employee display name, which was used in the component directly. And that, made the test fail. But we are going to talk about mocks in this episode. And what we basically are going to do is we are going to mock the behavior of this utility function inside of our unit test. So right now what we have, let me take you to VS Code and show you. Right now what we have is that inside employee list, we are using this function, which is declared here, right? Here. And then in the test, we had to change these, right? To make sure the expected, output generated by that utility function is used here. We are creating, as you can see, a test for employee list. We are creating the component and that's it. Now, what I want to do is to mock the behavior that this function is, presenting in this portion of employee list component. What that means is that I do not care about the actual behavior that this function has inside of this file. I want to have a mocked, a fake, right, version of this function and control its behavior myself and isolate my unit test written for this component from this dependency. So this is a dependency, employee get employee display name. This is a dependency, and my component, this component has a dependency on this function. I do not want to check the behavior of this dependency here. Why? Because I have already tested this here. So this is a test for the expected behavior of that function. Now that I am writing a test for my component, I want to isolate my test, or let's say my component, from this dependency. I want to mock the behavior of this dependency, this one, because this dependency has been tested elsewhere. Now the focus is on writing a test for the component, not on testing the behavior of that dependency, which is get employee display name. Basically, what we are going to do is to create a mocked version, right? A mocked version of that dependency, and then call our component and then check whether what we expect to return matches what the component is, creating using that mocked implementation of that dependency. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to remove this, but let me create a new branch. You can find, of course, this code in the description of this video. You just need to go to branch 4. So I'm going to remove this and I'm going to write the code that is using this dependency. And then I'm going to show you what I am doing. So I'm importing React again. I'm importing render and screen as before, and I am importing my component. I am importing the employee type as before. Now I am importing VI from vtest, which kind of helps us to create our mocked version of our utility function. So we're going to use mock, as you can see, on that utility function. And then we are going to mock the get display name function. And then we are going to import that function. We're going to create the describe block. We are going to create our employees. So basically we're going to have a list of employees, right, as before. And then the next step would be to mark the behavior of that dependency, which is called getEmployeeDisplayName. In order to mark that, I'm going to say that before each test, first I want to retest that marked version. And then I am going to write the test. So first I'm going to control the behavior of that, marked version. Marked get display name. This is the mock implementation. So basically the implementation is given an employee as input, what I expect to return, or what I expect this mock dependency to return is the name of the employee and the word mocked. And then I am going to render the employee list, and I expect this to be on the screen. The word mocked and the name of the, employee. The word mocked, Bob, the word mocked, and Alice. And I expect the mock dependency to have been called 2 times. I expect this to have been called with employee, the first employee and the second employee. So we're kind of done here, right? Let me show you exactly what we are doing compared to what we previously had. So as I told you, right now we are creating this employee, array. And then before each employee, before each test, we are creating the mock. We are clearing our mocks. And then we are we are importing that dependency, that utility function that the component depends on. Employee list depends on this, so this is a dependency for our component. And then as you can see, we are controlling the behavior, the expected behavior for this mock version. We're saying, given an employee as input, what we expect you to return is the word mocked and the name of that employee. And then we're gonna, call, render, actually the component. We're gonna pass in the props, employees, which we have created here, right? And then we have some expectations. First off, we expect to see these 2 pieces of text on the screen rendered by the component. The word mocked and the name of the employees. The next one is that we expect that function, that mocked version of the get display name to be called twice. It says to have been called 2 times, right? And then we again expect that to be called with employee number 1 and employee number 2. I mean the first employee and the second employee inside of that array. This is the mocking process in action. We are isolating this test, right, from the dependency of the component. The dependency of the component is this function, again, this function, but we are controlling the behavior of this function here. So right now the test for this component doesn't depend on the actual implementation of this function in this file, because the behavior has been controlled, the behavior has been mocked here. So this helps us to focus on testing the component without creating a real and actual dependency on the actual function. For example, if I come here and change this implementation, right? If I come here and, for example, remove the first, parentheses, as long as I have control over the behavior of the mocked version, this test will pass, because this test focuses on the behavior of the component. Of course, this test will not pass, because this test focuses on the behavior of that function, get employee display name. And I changed the production code right now, so the test code is not aligned with the production code for now. It will fail. This test will fail because this test actually is testing that dependency. But we do not expect this test to fail because this test doesn't have anything to do with that utility function. It is actually testing the component. So if I go and make a change in the component itself, I expect this test to fail. But as long as only the dependency has changed, which is this function again, I do not want my test to fail. So this is the beauty of isolating a component when you are testing it, from its dependencies. This is called, test isolation, and you can achieve test isolation using mocks. And one other thing before we wrap up this video is that we are using spies here. So basically, we are doing some behavior verification, or sometimes it is called invocation verification, meaning that we are, asserting that that function, that mocked version of the function, has been called this specific number of times with these specific, arguments. So we have full control on the behavior of the component, and we are creating a mocked version of the dependency that that component uses. I'm going to wrap up this video basically in our, node file. This is the same thing that we have, and we are, explaining everything here. And let me run the test again before I let you go. So I'm going to run the test one more time, and I will see that my tests passed, right? But if I come here and make a change here and then run the test, as you can see, the test that we have for the employee utils test failed. So this failed, right? But the component and the test that we have for the component didn't fail. And the test, of course, for the app test failed because we haven't created mocks in that file for now. We only have mocked the dependency inside of this code file. So if, for example, we want, we can continue and create a mock for this, function get display name inside of this app test file as well. But the point is, as long as the change that you are creating is not inside of the component, the test for the component is going to pass. Even if you make some changes to the dependency, the test for the dependency will fail, of course, but the test for the component will not fail. I'm going to put that back as well here and, run the code one more time. And as you can see, now we have 3 passing tests. Let me wrap up this video here and continue talking about this in the next one.